Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from a hot and steamy Accra morning. I am back in Ghana, folks. And you know what? I poo-poo Ghana sometimes and the Harmattan and all that good stuff, but it's kind of nice to be home. Kenny was awesome. We're going to have some great guests that are going to be joining us from my time there and different stories. And it was awesome. And it's also nice to be home. And home is where I almost missed a message from my guest today because we've been connected on LinkedIn. And just in time for our Women's Herstory series, we reconnected, and here we are going to have this awesome conversation I'm really excited about. So let me get to her bio, and we will take it from there. She is founder of Osman Advisory Services, a boutique consultancy firm specializing in applied behavioral science. She's a cognitive psychologist and global development specialist with nearly 2 decades of experience working in Europe, Africa, and Asia. A certified member of the Global Association of Applied Behavioral Scientists, GABS. She is an expert in social and behavioral change, health psychology, behavioral insights, behavioral design, and human-centered design. She has worked with these skills in many thematic areas, including diaspora, migration and development, sexual and reproductive health, and rights and education. Her clients have included World Vision, Save the Children, the Danish Refugee Council, Girl Effect, and many others. In 2024, she launched the Ela platform, which is designed to support women, particularly those with roots in the global majority, in starting or growing their consultancies or other knowledge-based businesses. Sarah Osman, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, so glad to be here. I'm so glad we made it.
Yes, indeed. Me too. So let's get started. Let's jump right in. Where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
Where am I from? That is a very complicated question. So I am Sudanese by blood, by birth, but I left Sudan when I was around 10 years old. And since then, I have lived in so many different places, and many of those places have become home in one way or another, even though I have left them. So one of those places is Zambia. After that, it was the Philippines. Then it was the Netherlands. It was Ghana for a minute. Then it was South Africa, Denmark for a little while. And now I live in Norway. So yeah, I consider myself a global citizen. I've learned and gained something from all of those places that I've lived. So yeah, I can't say that I really am from one place. I feel like I'm from all of those places.
And your craft, what would you describe your craft as?
I think primarily, the skill that I use the most is my psychology, my background in psychology. So my skills as a cognitive psychologist. When people hear that, they always think that that means therapy. That's what people associate with psychology. But psychology is much broader than that. It's about how they interact in society, how they process information, right? So it's much more than just therapy. So whatever I do, whatever capacity I'm working in, I'm always trying to understand why people are doing certain things. Why are they doing the things that they do? And I kind of got that curiosity from a very young age because we moved so much. I had to learn a new language entirely, right? So when I was 10, I didn't speak a word of English. And so when we moved to Zambia, I had to learn English and I had to adapt to a completely new context. And so I had to pay close attention to how people behaved, how they interacted, what they found funny and what they liked to eat. And you have to pay attention to all of those things to be able to fit in. And then after that, moving to the Philippines, again, like completely different culture, anyway, that kind of like piqued my interest in people and their behavior and their habits and their wants and needs and so on. And so I knew when I was an early teenager that I wanted to become a psychologist. That was very clear to me. And so yeah, I feel like that mindset informs everything that I do and how I move around in the world. And so that's what I work with as well. So I help organizations try to understand the people that they work with as well as themselves as a team and why they're doing the things that they're doing in a certain way, right? What their mindsets are. So that's kind of my craft, my speciality. And I use those same skills to design and build Ela. So when we think about how do you get people to start doing something that they have dreamed about and thought about for so long, how do you move them from point A to point B? Like, how do you get them there? And some of the things we love to default to are things like trainings, right? Information. Let's just binge on information and then we'll know how to do the thing. But if we all think about the last time that we did something new or tried something new, probably the most valuable thing we did was actually to start doing the thing, right? And not just focus on researching the thing. So yeah, that mindset informed how I designed Ela, also from a behavioral scientist perspective. I researched my audience. I tried to really understand what their blockers were and how we could then design the different elements of the program to help them unblock, right? And to help them get to the next level. And I chose to focus specifically on women with roots in the global majority because I know that we still face a lot of challenges when it comes to our self-confidence, our self-esteem, resources that are designed for us that speak to the challenges that we face. I also had a really hard time myself when I started my consultancy, and I did it all on my own, and there was no help, and there was no one like me that I could look to, or do you know what I mean? So I think also like doing things from personal experience, from lived experience, is so important for us to embrace as people of the global majority, because I feel like our perspective is still not widely shared. It could enrich general discourse, and general ways of doing things a lot more.
So let's understand, because you've spoken so much about your background and getting to where you are now. And so I want to ask why the where. So how did you come to be living, working, and playing in Norway?
I'm a love refugee in Norway. So my husband's Norwegian. Yeah, we met many moons ago while we were both on holiday in Greece. And yeah, it was love at first sight. It was all very dramatic. And, we had been together for a very long time, for 4 years, between Norway and the Netherlands, long distance and all of that. And then we were apart for many years because I had left the Netherlands in 2009. I moved to South Africa, started a whole new life because that was my intention. My long-term goal was to go back to the continent and live there. That was the goal. And I finally did it. And again, I just did it. Like I had enough money saved for 6 months. And I was like, I'm just going to go and I'm going to find a job and I'll build a new life there. And that's what happened, luckily. So I ended up at a wonderful organization called MSI Reproductive Choices, working on women's sexual and reproductive health and rights, a topic that's still very close to my heart. Learned a lot also about, living in South Africa, the dynamics in South Africa, a country with such incredible history and also just such a progressive policy environment, legal environment, and still so many challenges, right, that are so socially driven and so on. So anyway, and in that time, I reconnected with Paul Martin, with my husband, now husband. And yeah, I just, the heart called, and there was no way for me to escape after that. So, so I had to move back to Europe. And yeah, that's how we ended up in Norway. It's been 12 years now since I've been here.
So tell us a little bit more about your Norway, because you mentioned doing it on your own and being an entrepreneur, but tell us about kind of that business landing and then just what life is in your Oslo.
I struggled a lot coming to Norway. So I had already faced a lot of challenges in the Netherlands in terms of I just wasn't able to see how I could progress there career-wise. And that was why I made the decision to leave Europe. And so coming back to Norway, a lot of those reasons of why I left Europe in the first place resurfaced again. And so that was also the reason why I decided to start Osman Advisory Services and start my own company, because I knew what the storyline was going to be like. And I just wasn't prepared to do that anymore. So, I felt it was best for me to look at how I can contribute to the sector, to global development from my perspective. And, the push wasn't just Norway. It was also the sector, the international development field. I think many people, including yourself, know that it has a lot of challenges and needs an overhaul, essentially. So I wanted to contribute to social impact, to global development, but I wanted to do it on my own terms. And so that was the push. And it was definitely, I couldn't see what I wanted to build reflected in the ecosystem here. That just wasn't there. And there was no one really to turn to for support or help. There were probably some things in the US at the time that I wasn't aware of, but anyway, they weren't on my radar, right? And it just, obviously they didn't speak to me at that life stage because they didn't come onto my radar. And also the US is very, very different than Europe. So it wouldn't have worked anyway. I can say I did it on my own. Obviously, my husband was my supporter, also financially, because he had to take care of us the first year as I was getting started. So, but yeah, I had to build a lot of the resilience and the mindset myself. When it comes down to it, the technical skills are, of course, important. But when you run a business, you need to be really resilient and you need to have a certain level of delulu, right? Like unreasonable self-belief for you to keep going and believe in this end goal of, where you want to end up. And for me, there was no option. So there were no jobs for me here. There was nothing really. So this was the only way. Yeah. And I think that's also important for drive, right? Better make this happen. Just figure it out because there are no other options.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Yeah. So you've basically been not a digital nomad, but you've been digital for quite a long time, right? That's been how you survive. So tell us about navigating that as your way, particularly with kind of the cultural nuance that comes into work and all those things. Tell us about how that has shaped your business practice and how you're able to maintain clients, all that.
So in the beginning, when I started, there was more travel because digital work, complete remote work wasn't as it is now, right? So, but because I am actually very comfortable in new environments, it's just, I've had to adapt to survive in new environments and just figure it out. It wasn't that scary to me, to take an assignment in a country that I'd never been to before, right? So, for example, I did some work in Rwanda and I did interviews. I did primary data collection with people, and people are people, you'll figure it out, right? But you need to have that openness. And so for me, that was definitely not a hindrance, not an issue to just do that. Of course, over the years, then COVID happened and everything changed. And that was just transformational for my business, where I was really able to level up because remote work became the norm. And so with that, as I started getting more clients and more projects, I also adopted a policy, also because I became a mom in the meantime and so on. And so I couldn't travel as often. So I adopted a policy of always collaborating with a consultant from the country. So I'm actually against going in as an external expert. I think that is a big part of the problem of why we are where we are. So whenever I have a project somewhere in an African country or Asian country, then it's going to be with a local collaborator. I always put that into my proposals, and I feel like that helps me to deliver much higher quality work. It makes the client see things from a different perspective when they have a local expert giving them their view on what they have initiated and what they could do better. And also it's opportunity creation. I want to see young African consultants get the opportunities, and somebody needs to take that risk. So even if it's someone I haven't worked with before, I'll speak to them. I'll get a feel for them. I'll test a few things. How often do they check their email? How quickly do they respond to their emails? Do they show up on time to the calls? These are the things that I want. It's not rocket science. Everything else we can work on. Are you coachable? Are you willing? Are you paying attention? These are the things that I want to know. And everything else we'll figure it out, right? So I think also taking that, I don't want to call it a risk because I don't think that that's the right word, but just being willing to take that approach. And if the quality of the deliverable is not great, I'll fix it. So then, yes, I'm spending more of my time, but it's fixable, right? And then we've tested the relationship. And if it works, fantastic. We'll keep working together. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, right? But it's really important to make sure those doors are open, right? And then I also have an agreement with them that they are very welcome to take on continue the relationship with the local office of the organization while I maintain my relationship with the headquarters or whatever, right? So I'm also not going to get in their way of doing things. Like I want them to build their business and their client base as well. So yeah, and I feel like that works really well. So I don't need to be the one traveling and doing, like, it doesn't make sense also because in any case, I would need to work with someone who understands the language. We all know that even if we're speaking, one of the colonial languages, it's neither here nor there because you need to speak the local language. And I won't have that anyway. So, yeah.
Wow. That's a great strategy. And it's not unfortunate, but it's it's the opposite of what most big development agencies are typically doing. They're going in, they're swooping in, they're out of context. And that's where we have a lot of disconnection and basically wasted resources on programs and projects that don't have that sustainable function. So you, by working with a local partner, have that sustainability built into the project. So two things. One is in this work and how it's evolved, particularly as, we have these new conversations about Gen Z and what it's like working with Gen Zs. Have you had that experience yet? And as a psychologist, like really looking at the mindsets of younger people, what are you finding in working with them and just in your overall assessment of what, the sectors are saying about they, need babying and all these things?
Okay, so generally when I hire consultants to work with me on projects, they are mid-career. They're not Gen Z. So they'll be like mid-30s.
So
upwards.
Millennials and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's just because I'm looking for people with some experience. And that also tends to be the age where people will start their own consultancies because they have some work experience, right? But with Ella, I do have a Gen Zer as the community manager. And she is just the most incredible go-getting, she just does the things. So there's definitely no babying. I was actually very surprised. I had someone else before her that did not go as well. That's why she's not with me anymore. Yeah. There was definitely the entitlement. I have a master's degree. And so I'm like, la, la, la. There was a lot of that. And she wasn't able to do anything, which was also incredible. Like she wasn't able to write emails without ChatGPT, and she wasn't. Anyway, there was it was insane. But the person that I have now, I don't think that any of those traits are there that we hear about on social media and stuff. There's definitely more attention to like self-care and mental health, which I'm not mad at per se. Like, I think it's important to, step away when you feel like you've had a bad week and you just can't really function optimally and you just need some time off. So I would say like what I've seen from the person I've been directly working with and other consultants who work with Gen Zers, they're definitely more likely to ask for like, I need some space or I need some time off this week or whatever, right? And like take care of their mental health. And I think that's okay. I think I'm like generationally, I'm an older millennial, maybe bordering on Gen X. my attitude was very different. At that age, I was more like, I want to have every opportunity I can get my hands on. But that's how we were. It's not necessarily that that's the way it should be, right? So
Right. Good.
I'm willing to accept every generation, they have their own way of doing things, right? The one before us, the generation before us was maybe very married to this idea of having a job and why are you taking risks? And, and millennials are maybe more likely to do that and just like explore or do things for themselves and not be married to this idea of having a secure job. So I don't know. So yeah, I no judgment. I think everybody should be taken on a like case by case basis, and let's not draw blanket conclusions. And maybe there are things we can learn from them as well, right? Taking care of our mental health, which as Africans, it's not our strong point. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. That says it all. Okay. So now speaking about all the places you've lived and speaking in certain languages, I want to ask about what your Glocal speak is. And so this is a word or phrase or saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience, wherever you have felt local, and why or how you value it as Glocal speak. And tell us how many languages you speak, because all of these places you've lived, I'm sure you have many.
Yeah, no, not really. Surprisingly not. So Sudanese Arabic is my mother tongue, but it's not my most comfortable language. So there's a complication there. My most comfortable language is English, for sure. Then I speak Dutch, because I lived in the Netherlands for many years. My Scandinavian is, I understand everything. I can read it because it's also in the Germanic family. And I learned Danish before we came to Norway. I can speak it if I have to. So if somebody's threatening me, then I'll speak it. But I don't feel very comfortable in Scandinavian. Yeah. So, and then unfortunately, like in the Philippines, it's very
English,
American. So, learning Tagalog was not really a possibility because everybody just spoke English. And Zambia as well, I didn't learn any of the local languages because that's also where I learned English. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I wish I spoke Zulu or, one of the Southern African languages, but I don't. So I know some phrases from here and there. I think like a nice one that maybe is more related to my roots is the word khalas, because it's so understood because so many people speak Arabic, right? So, and it's one of those Arabic words that a lot of people from Arabic speaking countries understand. And so that's maybe the one that comes to mind. Even my husband likes to use it every now and then.
And what does it mean?
It can mean a lot of things. It can be like, okay, that's enough, or like it's the end of the conversation, or it can also mean okay, or like are we in agreement? So it's a word that can be used in different contexts.
Okay.
But technically maybe it means finished or the end or something like that. Yeah, it's malleable. So
okay. And it's khalas?
Khalas.
Halas. 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 I learned some Arabic today.
Yes, you did.
I love it. Okay. So I love how you spoke about learning people and understanding people as part of who you were growing up, and then needing to use that same kind of skill to decide, okay, this is how I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And so now take us to the journey where Ela happens and what it was like building that new aspect of a business that you've been running in a certain way, and how you are landing and growing and thriving now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think with Ela, it came from a place of wanting to give back, number one. So I feel like I have a lot of privilege. I think those of us who have European or Western nationality, who speak English fluently, like these are all forms of privilege that we are not always aware of, so I think, or we don't pay attention to that enough, right? So it came from that place of, what would my life have looked like if I had stayed in Sudan? There are so many more much smarter, much more interesting Sudanese women than me that don't have access to the opportunities that I have. who I don't hear enough from. I want to see them on my LinkedIn feed. I want their perspective, right? And also helping people think about different ways that they can generate an income than just being fixated on a job, right? So I think we all know that we are very far away from where we need to be in terms of achieving gender equality. And also in my work, when I'm looking for consultants, for example, to partner with, and I put out a call for consultants, I'll often get mainly it's male applicants. And so to date, I've mainly worked with male African consultants. So I noticed that, they were much more comfortable positioning themselves, selling themselves. And we know what things are like for many of us in our countries of origin and where women are in those societies, right? So I'm not saying that, Ella is solving gender inequality, but it's about making contribution to the things that you care about. And if there's anything I care about most, it's women's rights and where women are in society. And I really believe that if we don't address that, we're not going to get very far, right? In anything. Women being able to decide over their bodies, women being able to participate economically, women being able to participate politically. If we don't fix these things, we won't have much. So, it's just coming from that place of wanting to see women shine. We also know that when women do better, they take others with them. They take others along with them. And so you're much more likely to see a ripple effect when you invest in women. And just the everyday things that get in all our way. I experienced it myself as well, especially because I'm in Norway, where I would say I'm largely invisible. It's not like I don't feel that people really see that I could add any value in general. Like that's usually the sense I get in all the spaces that I'm in. And of course, I protected myself by having my own company and all my work being remote and all of that. So I've created a buffer around myself, but I see how much it affects me every time I'm in those spaces where I'm made to feel undesirable, let's say. And so it really takes a toll on you. And so I know how important it is to have a space that reminds you of the facts of how great you actually are. It's not about, I'm not trying to make people believe something about themselves that's not true. No, we are trying to show women what the evidence is of what they have done and how people have responded to their work and how can they elevate that, right? And take that to the next level. So in designing the program, like I said, I use my behavioral scientist lens. So, I put out a kind of wait list where I had a questionnaire attached to that to sort of understand what women wanted. Then I had several conversations with women who wanted to do something for themselves, do something independent, many of whom were, of course, in the international development field, because that's kind of the circle that I'm in anyway. And, similar frustrations with the system and the way that the system works, but also many others who are not in international development. So also women in academia who wanted to do something with their technical expertise, women in the private sector who wanted to do something with their expertise as well. So we're definitely sector agnostic. We're not just focusing on social impact or whatever. And then we did a pilot to understand what the components should be, what should be the key ingredients that would really help women excel as consultants. I would say that Ella acts as an incubator for sure. So if we take that model, and there are some key elements that we know from psychology work really well. So the first is that you see others who have done the thing that can also explain to you where they struggled, where they faced a challenging time and how they overcame that. So one of the key components we have is what we call inspirational webinars. So women of color who have successful consultancies who come and tell the members about their experience and their tips and tricks of what to do. We also share some of those snippets on our LinkedIn page and on Instagram, so you can get a taster. Then we know that technical expertise or technical knowledge around the things that need to be done to run a business, to run a consultancy, are also really important, right? So we have a combination of a self-paced course it's not really a course, it's like a list of tasks that you have to do. And we have what we call technical webinars or learning webinars. And there we unpack technical things like how to use AI as a consultant, financial management, how to network, right? So how to negotiate, all of these things that together will build your expertise and your skills as a consultant. So we do that in a couple of ways. So some sessions I lead myself, and then some sessions we'll again invite external speakers, external guests. So we just had one on financial management with a woman who has her own accounting firm, and she helps other women get their finances right in business, right? So it's also very sourced by what the members want. So what are they looking for? What do they think is more crucial? AI has been a hot topic for a while, of course. Things like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a huge pain point for a lot of people, right? And like showing up on LinkedIn, I would say it's like sharing your story in general, which is one of the pillars of what we do. And this to me is one of the central things that I work with the members around is I need them to find a way to express themselves, figure that out, choose a platform and do it and stick to it. LinkedIn is, of course, the easiest and most accessible where you can also find your customers. So it's really important to get comfortable with LinkedIn. But, you could start a YouTube channel, you could start a Substack, whatever, find something, do it. But it's really a huge pain point that we keep working on. And so that also has to do with the fact that we don't see enough of us doing it as well, right? So it's like we're in this circular thing, right? And I'm like, well, if you want to see more like you, then you need to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, and then of course, there's connection with each other. So we have a community platform, we have meetups, we have group meetups, we have weekly office hours where the members can jump on and ask me whatever they need to about what happened that week or anything related to consulting. So yeah, I would say like these are the main ingredients of what we feel works really well. And of course, we're still growing and iterating, but it's just amazing to see concrete things happen, like them daring to raise their prices or day rates. Like
Simple
these
things.
are the things I'm looking for. Yeah, like some tangible, like winning contracts, right? Publishing, putting things out there, growing their social media. So it's a combination of wanting to see these hard skills being developed, but also the soft skills. So self-confidence, feeling more comfortable to call yourself a business owner or a consultant, like all of these things are also really important signals. Taking yourself seriously, right? So yes, that's what we do. And if, on our landing page, you also see we have a framework that we work through. It's called the Growth Blueprint. And so there are also specific things that, specific areas that I want the members to work on as they go along with us.
So by the way, folks, check out the website. It's very accessible. The user experience is wonderful. So please go to, it's Ela.com, right?
It's Ela-membership.com.
So that'll be in the show notes. I want to understand. So you have women coming in at various levels. It's an incubator concept. How much time do your members typically spend in that incubator stage and then moving into this advisor stage, I guess, or just kind of community stage? How do you see that playing out?
So we've just been active for just a little over a year. We've had members, I would say like maybe 4 of them have been with us from the very beginning. So the idea of the space is that, so we have 2 memberships. So there's Light and Pro. So Pro is best when you're really getting started and you need a lot of support because that's where you get one-on-one time with me as well. But we also have experienced consultants who are on Ela Light because they want to have access to the events, to the community, to discussion, to the office hours. And so they already know how to do the thing and they're already doing it, but they want to have that supportive space, right? So the idea is that you can start out in pro. I would say that if you're really like starting from the ground up, it should take you about 6 months to be established and up and running. And so that's how we've also designed the journey, that by 6 months, you're definitely like, you have a couple of clients and you're doing things, right? So things look clear. And then you still have access. You could decide to stay with us and continue to get access to all the benefits. But of course, it varies from person to person. We also have members who are still working, but are definitely want to build their own consult. So it's like their long-term goal. We are quite strict about who we let in because I need everybody to be on that mindset of wanting to build something, right? So if you're just kind of considering it, or if it's like something in the, like maybe not the right space, there are other communities that you can join if you're still in that exploratory phase, right? And then our thinking is that, let's say that, we have members with us for 2 years or 3 years, and they're ready to scale. So let's say now they're ready to actually start a firm. They don't just want to be solopreneurs anymore. They're looking to expand and scale and whatever. There are other platforms and other communities, other service providers that we know and trust that we can refer them to, right? And those are others that I'm building relationships with as well to make sure that we have the right ethos, and that we have the right mindset, the same mindset of what we're trying to help these women achieve, so that the support is continuous. But Ella is definitely in that, if you know, the hockey stick growth principle. So we're definitely at that stage where you're building. And when you're going through that difficult phase where things are not, you're working and working and working, but there isn't something concrete happening yet, right? And we just want to keep you going because a lot of people quit right before that inflection point, right? Just before things are about to take off. And so the idea is to keep you going through these years that are very tough, very difficult. I'm starting a new service now, and I'm also experiencing the same things. Like the self-doubt kicks in, like something doesn't go your way and you're like questioning everything, right? So building that resilience and finding a way to continue and to pick yourself up and keep going. So that's why we also feel like it can be a really great space to be in for a couple of years, right? And we've priced it in a way that it's reasonable, that, you can stay in it just to be connected and plugged in, even when you don't need that hand holding as well, right? So
makes sense. So all this that you're saying has me thinking about mindset and my mindset hack question. So how do you hack your mindset?
What we talked about, the Delulu. So
Yeah.
I just for me, just unreasonable self-belief is really important. You need to be your main cheerleader.
Yeah.
You can get that validation always from the outside. It's nice to have others kind of tell you what they see in you and whatever. But to keep going, you need to just be very clear about what is that vision that you want, right? Like, what does it look like? Yeah. So for me, that's definitely, Delulu is very, very helpful. And then I read a beautiful article today, and she was talking about, especially like this whole, when things are not moving, you're building and working and putting in all this effort, but like you're not seeing the results yet. And how do you keep going? And she was saying, just remember what a privilege it is to actually be in the doing, right? It just really touched me to the core, because it is also something that I remind myself often. There are so many people who are so much better and smarter than me, who don't have the privileges and the opportunity to be building a service. A lot of people are just trying to survive or get by, right? And here I am I'm going to start my third venture now. And it's just remembering where you are, right?
Yeah. Do you think that you take a lot of your training and apply it I'm sure you do, but in terms of how you apply it to the idea of getting people through that space, right? Because I mean, obviously you're kind of in this coaching type space, but not coaching type space, or it is kind of a coaching space. So in that training and in looking at what's going on in the world, how are you finding ways to move people towards their mindset hack? Because when you're saying like, it's easy to begin that, I can get in that space, right? I'm my biggest cheerleader, right? In love with myself. But I know that takes time for people to realize with life around them. So how are you bringing people along? Just quick tips, not behind a paywall. Kind of.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
Sure. I think the most important thing is to break things down to their smallest possible element, right? So instead of, let's say you want to, let me not take running because I'm not a runner. Let's say you want to start strength training, right? So that's something that I started like 2 years ago, and it's super intimidating and overwhelming. I knew nothing, right? So when you come into that space, oh my gosh, people are lifting all this weight on bars, and, it could never be me. And so, you start with the little weights and whatever. And then a few months later, you are at the bar, right? But you started with tiny steps, right? Like you started with 10 kgs and then you built up to 15 and so on. So the same principle applies to everything, right? So one of the things that I recommend that people do when they want to start a business or start a service, yes, you can start putting things down on paper if you want, but what I think is much better to do is to start talking to your potential customers. Not in the sense that you are going to be selling them something, but you need to become an expert at their pain points. Figure out what is it that you want to build for them. And is it true? Is it even a thing? Right? So a lot of people are also starting something because they think it's cool or whatever. But if there's no market for it, there's no business. So that logic doesn't make any sense. So before you go super deep into something, just talk to people. It's the most underrated thing, right? Just have conversation. That's it. So when you feel overwhelmed or like, this is too big and it's too much, and just ask somebody who is kind of like your ideal customer or client, just ask them for a chat. And it's not a sales call. Again, like people mix these two things. You're not talking to people like, hey, I have this idea to da-da-da-da. It's not that. The conversation is, tell me about your experience with this. Tell me about your experience with the daycare that you use for your kids. Let's say you want to start a daycare center. What is it like? How did you find it? What were the criteria that you were looking at? Who did you talk to in the process? What made you choose this one? These are the kinds of conversations we need to be having. So I would say, like, when our members get into this mindset of, this is too much and I don't see how I'm ever going to get a client. And, these are the things that I start talking to them about. What can you do tomorrow, today or tomorrow, that's going to move you a tiny step closer to what it is that you want to do?
Yeah, great advice. And you kind of made me think about something that I feel women often, and people in general, take for granted, is this idea of mentorship. So that idea of talking to people. How do you approach mentorship in your own personal development and guide people to understand how to be a good mentor or mentee? Because it's not just like it happens. There's some, not science, but there's structure to some extent to it.
I think that there's a lot I can learn to be a better mentor. I don't consider myself a coach because I'm not trained as a coach. What I share with the Ela members is my experience, right? So what I have done and what I know others around me have done as well, like women that I have a relationship with. But I think where I turn to often, YouTube University is great.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of people on there who I just I admire how they think. I admire how their brain works. So I try to absorb that kind of thinking and just give it to me, feed me with this. I'm actually at a stage where I am thinking about getting, I don't know if it's a business coach or if it's it's something, I don't know who this person is, but I'm looking for them. So if you're listening, please reach out to me.
Yeah.
So I am looking for that because I do want to level up. There's a lot that I would love to learn and grow from, but there are other consultants who I really admire. One of them is one of our supporters, actually, Manal Sayed. Look her up, Sayed Consulting. She is I love how she shows up. I love how she's authentically herself. She's super smart. There are so many things about how she shows up in the world that I really admire. And so, I try to also bring those women into the Ella ecosystem because this is also what it's not about me. It's about all the other amazing women of color who have done this. And so many of them, if you see the list of supporters on our website, so many women are just like, I love what you're doing. I want to help. What can I do? I'll come and give a talk. I'll do whatever, So we've listed them all on our website, and there's just so much richness there. There's just so many unknown superstars who are women of color. And I'm like, please, we want to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's you hit it on the nose that there's so much of us.
Genius.
There's
so
abundance. So we can, exactly. So there's no reason for us to ever feel like we're at a loss because you open any door and there's something there for you. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So you kind of hinted at what's new and next for you. So what's new and next? What's cooking for Sarah in the next,
So I think I mentioned it to you before that for a while I had this shame about being of the African diaspora and wanting to do something for the continent and feeling like, well, who am I to do, I don't live there now, so I shouldn't have anything, la, la, la. But I feel like this is not really doing anybody a service. What is the point of that thinking? I'm not taking anything away from anybody. I just want to add to whatever is there, to the genius that's there. I want to collaborate with others. I want to build a Pan-African company. So that's what I'm working on now from scratch, focused on behavioral science, behavioral insights, consumer insights, but very much for the continent, coming from the perspective of the continent and wanting to have a team that is Africa-based as well, right? And eventually one day when my kids are grown and I have the time to be geographically mobile, I'll definitely spend more time on the continent as well. But yeah, I feel like I'm ready to get out of that mindset of I should just sit in a corner and shut up and not have anything to say about it, and look at how I can help. Because this service is it's not about me per se. It's a service that's supposed to help things move along in business, in organizations, in organizational culture, in how people think about the way that they design their programs, the way that they design their businesses, and help them create things that are lasting, that are incredible, right? So I feel like we can really add a lot of value.
Yeah.
And this time I'm going to do things differently. I don't want to do it just solo anymore. So I definitely want to have a team, which is a very different mindset from where I was when I started Osman Advisory Services, So it's also challenging me intellectually and just confidence wise as well. Like, can I?
But I love it. It's that vulnerability that will attract to you the kinds of partners that fill in the spaces, right? And
I hope so. Yeah.
So I love to hear that.
Yeah. And if anyone is intrigued by that, please just drop me an email and I can send you more information. I have started sharing a newsletter around this new service. It's called Pattern Recognition. It's a free newsletter.
I love it.
And so if you want to be in the loop, then please sign up. I can also share the link with you.
Yeah. As you're saying this, I'm like, this is what we need, because what we have to really think about is deprogramming the colonial mindset. And a lot of when you first said it, I was like, oh, okay, this is great, because your background says it all. This is where we start from a base of let's not be that. We are from a base of us. So yay. That'll be in the show notes, folks. Don't worry. You'll have your chance. Sarah, this has been so awesome. Before we let you go, we cannot leave without knowing who you are when you're not working, building businesses, advising. Are you a reader, a watcher, a listener? And what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens? Or what else do you do in your not on the clock time?
Yeah, thanks. So I am mommy to Lila and Mali, which have taken up 152% of my time. So reading is a big love of mine, but it has been on the back burner for too long. Luckily, they're getting a bit bigger, so I have a little bit more time to read. Just finished a really entertaining read, and it's called Credit Alert by Ayo Akinola. I definitely recommend picking that up if you're into, it's not a behavioral science book, but it's coming from that perspective of like consumers, insights, and how do you get people to fall in love with your product or buy your product and so on. So and also just written in a very funny way. And I'm just about to start a book called We Are Not Consumers by Louis Seco, also in that world. And these both books, I think, are both published in 2025. So it's very interesting to see, that kind of writing coming out of the continent. I've been looking for it for a while. So I'm looking forward to getting started on that one. One of my struggles is like showing up on social media or things like that. And so I tried to learn from this YouTuber called Omar El-Takrori. He has a podcast called The Department. And I really enjoy listening to him. I like how he thinks and his perspective on the world and content and, the role of content in business. So I highly recommend that people check that out. And I'm not going to mention all the trash TV that I watch.
It's fine. Not just one. We all like to veg out sometimes. So thank you for those. Sarah, this has been awesome. We will have those in the show notes. And before we let you go, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners today?
First of all, I want to thank you so much for creating this platform. I think we really need it. And I really hope that we can find some ways to come closer together as the diaspora and, really figure out what we can do for our continent a bit more systematically. I think we're all doing things, here and there. But I feel like some sort of concerted effort would be really great. And I hope that everybody keeps those who also not as lucky as we are to be safe and to have a roof over their head and just to be in a safe country in their thoughts and for us to all find a way to give back every day. So thank you.
I love it. Those are great last thoughts. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. I appreciate this so much.
I appreciate it too. All right, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, share, subscribe, leave us a review. Check out the show notes. Lots of gems. And I want to thank you for joining us for our March Herstory series because these are women's voices that, as Sarah mentioned, we're all out here. So let's support each other. Let's understand each other. And also to her point, we can come together systematically to uplift because we're all on a Pan-African progress mission, or at least I am, and many of my guests. All right, folks, until next time, bye for now.